Well, ladies and gentlemen, delighted to welcome you to the 9th Caregiver Summit presented by WellMed Charitable Foundation and ACOG, the Area Agency on Aging. I'm Ron Aaron, delighted to be here today as your moderator and look forward to a great program. This is our third virtual summit, and it's our first hybrid summit. Just some statistics for you. We have nearly 500 people registered, literally from around the world. We have folks across the United States, some in Ottawa, Manila, Puerto Rico, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, New Jersey, New Mexico, and Wisconsin, just to name a few. This is becoming a worldwide summit, and we are so pleased. Online, we have some 300 people registered, 235 are family caregivers, 176 are professionals, and 86 are both caregivers and professionals working in the field, and it is a very impressive statistic. November, as you may know, is National Family Caregiver Month. This year in this hybrid event, speakers and some participants will be online, and we have watch parties in several locations: Corpus Christi, Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen, Dallas, and San Antonio. Let me give you a little bit of our housekeeping rules. Please use the Q&A feature if you have questions for our speakers. Morgan Zachmeyer, caregiver specialist, will be monitoring the Q&A. The chat feature is used to share your thoughts and ideas. Javi Martinez, caregiver specialist, is monitoring the chat feature, and he will let us know what's going on there. If you are having any technical difficulties, please call 866-390-6491. 866-390-6491. For your information, this session will be recorded and it will be made available at a later date. We will send out an electronic survey after the summit for those online and a paper survey before you leave today if you're at one of the watch parties. And we encourage you, please fill out those surveys. It helps us make this program even better for next year. Social work and nursing CEUs are being offered. Certificates of attendance will also be available. Make sure you fill out your survey to indicate which one you would like and what name you would like on the certificate. And now it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce our first speaker to kick off the program, and it's a pleasure to do so. Carol Zernial has a master's degree from Our Lady of the Lake University, from the University of Incarnate Word, pardon me. She's a nationally recognized gerontologist, was named one of the nation's top 50 influencers in aging by Next Avenue, the digital journalism arm of the PBS system. Carol has been involved in the field of gerontology and caregiving for many years. She's currently serving as executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation, serves on the Raise Family Caregiver Advisory Council under President Biden, and is past chair of the board of directors of the National Council on Aging. She's also co-host with me of the podcast Caregiver, SOS on Air. And so both in person and virtually, please give a round of applause for Carol Zernial. Carol.
Thank you so much, Ron. It's a pleasure to be with you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Caregiver Summit. We look forward to this every year, and just know that you are in the right place. This is the place for anyone who is a caregiver. It's a moment for you, and we just are thrilled to have you. We are also thrilled to be co-sponsoring this event with the Area Agency on Aging at the Alamo Area Council of Governments. My colleague, Mike Juarez, who's the manager for the Area Agencies on Aging, and you'll get a chance to hear from him. I have to thank our title sponsor, United Healthcare. You know, we couldn't do these summits without our sponsors, and United has been a faithful sponsor, along with our diamond sponsors, Vitas, Candace Ramos. We had her on Caregiver SOS on Air recently. She was fantastic, and we really got good feedback, Candace, if you haven't heard. Our gold sponsors, GB Moreno and Associates and PTT Financial. And I want to say special thanks to Sage Care Management. They're providing our CEUs. the National Alliance for Caregiving, and Latinx Voces and World Voices Media. They've been promoting the summit, as well as everyone else. All of you have been sharing about it on Facebook and on social media platforms, and all of our sponsors who have supported the summit and the family caregivers in the communities they serve. So you're going to hear good advice, good information, ways that you can, take care of yourself and support your loved ones. But in addition to this information that's for you personally, I want to back up and talk about something very important I want you to do. Do you think that there should be paid family medical leave for caregivers? Do you think caregivers should get a tax break for the expenses of caregiving? Do you think that we should have higher paid for our professional caregivers and that the workforce should be stronger and well-trained? If the answer is yes to any of those, I want you to go and look at the new national strategy for family caregivers under the RAISE Act. So this is the first national strategy at the federal level. It talks about federal, state, local, public, private, everything we can do to make life better and easier for caregivers, and they're looking for comments. So check out the national strategy, go to acl.gov/caregiver strategy. That's acl.gov/caregiver strategy. You'll find it on the links on our website at Caregiver SOS. And that is very important for the future of all of us as caregivers.
Well, Carol, thank you very much. It's a delight to have you with us. Let me take a moment to introduce Mike Juarez. As many of you know, as Carol indicated, Mike is with ACOG, the Alamo Area Council of Governments. He's from Brownsville, Texas, graduated from Homer Hanna High School and Tarleton State University in Stephenville, Texas, with a bachelor in history. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1986, retired from the Army in June of 1921, and started work 2021. Pardon me, he's not that old. Started working with ACOG in August of 2022. I just made him about 120 degree age in years. He's married, 4 adult children, 2 in Austin, 1 in Killeen, and 1 in Arizona. His hobbies include historical site visits and long, quiet walks at South Padre Island. It's a pleasure to introduce Mike Juarez. Mike?
Thank you, sir. And yes, long walks in South Padre Island are a hobby of mine. And my wife and I do that as often as we can. So yes, very nice. Thank you all and good morning. So you heard right, long walks in the beach are awesome and refreshing. Thank you all for having me address the group. I have a special place in my heart for caregivers. They are our angels on earth. They're heroes. Bottom line is they take care of our most vulnerable population. So here at ACOG, Aging Directorate, we focus on those that are 60 and older. I know that I have caregivers on the line that take care of others as well, but our target is always those that are 60 and older. And let's face it, they deserve quality care as a thank you for their service to our society and our nation. The way I look at it is, without our plumbers, without our nurses, without our police officers, without our everyday bus driver that takes us to and from work, after they do their years of service when they were young and they give our nation, our society, their best years of their lives, they want to be taken care of afterwards, right? And so they deserve that. And I know that our caregivers are some of the best in the world, and I hold them in high esteem. And again, as we sit here, we must support our elder Texans, and we also must support those that take care of our older Texans. Being a Texan myself, closer to 60 myself, who knows, I may be recipient of such services. And so again, I thank you all again. And then also, who takes care of our caregivers? As Ms. Carol alluded to earlier, she talked about all kinds of great incentives. And again, everything I heard coming from her in terms of propositions, I think they're all worthy of a good fight if we have to go and petition for it. Again, thank you all so much for having me, and this is my first experience in the quote unquote civilian sector, and so bear with me if I use some acronyms and shenanigans throughout the time, and just remind me, and then I'll be able to explain some of my jargon. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Mike Juarez with ACOG, the Area Agency Council of Governments. Robert Sines joins us, Senior Director, Growth and Broker Relations for WellMed. He's speaking on behalf of United Healthcare, one of our title sponsors. Robert? I think you're muted, Robert. Still not hearing you. For some reason, Robert is muted and we can't hear him. My wife has said to me that on my tombstone, she's going to put, and now Ron is finally muted. You're still muted, Robert. I'll tell you what, let's pick him up in a little while. Robert, we'll come back to you after a little while once we solve that technical glitch, and we really appreciate you being here. Up next, if she's in the queue, is our friend Candace Ramos with Vitas Healthcare, one of our diamond sponsors. And Candace, are you with us?
I'm here, Ron.
Great. Go ahead, you're on.
I'm on already. So since we're getting this day started, I'm going to ask for everyone to do me a favor and stand up. So Elvira Cisneros, stand up. Alicia Trevino, stand up. District 2, stand up. Florida, stand up. Texas, stand up. Puerto Rico, stand up. Everyone stand up. We're going to start this day off with some positivity, and we're going to have an open mind. So we're going to shake off all the thoughts that are going through our heads, everything that's going on. Shake it off, shake it off. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Let it go. There's nothing that you can do right now besides be here and be in the moment and take these great speakers in and go home refreshed to continue your caregiving duties. So we at Vitas Healthcare understand, we honor you, and we know the difficult role that you play. We know that as a caregiver, it provides you a unique opportunity to build resilience and recover from setbacks, learn to adapt from change, and to keep going in the face of adversity. As you're going through your days as a caregiver, I want you to remember these 12 steps. Admit that caring for yourself as a caregiver is crucial to your well-being. Believe that your well-being comes from a sense of your own value and is a reflection of your belief in the value of life in general. Make a conscious decision to accept my own limits and give responsibility for the entire world. What are my personal limits? Ask myself, when was the last time I made a conscious effort to value myself and meet my own needs? Ask myself to measure the balance in my own life. Is there balance or is there chaos? Do you feel like there's a bear chasing you? Create a plan to acknowledge my needs on a daily basis and take steps to meet them. What is one need I have and what steps am I going to take to meet this need? Allow myself to be less than perfect and build a plan for regular self-evaluation and plan modifications. Ask myself how much time I spend working on the individual life plans of others. What have I given up in the process? Ask myself if there's anything I am doing for my care recipient that they could do for themselves. Take whatever steps are necessary to return decision-making and responsibility to any capable individual involved, as well as myself. Your brothers, your sisters, your husband, your children. There are lots of people that want to help you. They just need to know how, and you just need to say, this is exactly what I need help with, because they're not mind readers. Pause in my work and personal life, listen for the voice within me, and find a source of peace and wisdom. Where do I find my source of strength? Last but not least, share what I know and believe with others. It is not enough to know it, I must live it.
Can we sit down?
Yes, oh, sorry, I hope you were standing the whole time. I hope that you sat down and I hope that you enjoyed today. And thank you so much for allowing VTOS to be a sponsor and to be here.
Great job as always. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Candace. Also, we've got greetings from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and from Park City, Utah, where my son Chris graduated from high school many, many years ago. And it's a great town. It's a pleasure now to introduce our first speaker at this year's 9th Caregiver Summit. Dr. Margaret Chisolm is a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Johns Hopkins University with a secondary appointment in the Department of Internal Medicine. She's board certified in general psychiatry and addiction medicine. She has 3 decades of clinical experience in these fields. Dr. Chisolm has served as principal investigator or co-investigator on multiple nationally funded research projects, and she has published over 100 scientific, clinical, and medical education papers on psychiatric disorders and humanistic medical practice, as well as 2 textbooks, and most recently, a book for patients and families living with mental illness, From Survive to Thrive, Living Your Best Life with Mental Illness. Dr. Chisolm is a member of the Miller-Colson Academy of Clinical Excellence and the director of the Paul McHugh Program for Human Flourishing, which is not a bad idea. I support human flourishing, where she uses the arts and humanities to explore the big, big questions. It is a pleasure to welcome our first speaker for today's Caregiver Summit, Dr. Margaret Chisolm. Dr. Chisolm.
Yes, thank you for having me. I am going to share my screen and we'll get going. And we're going to start by just giving thanks for being here. We're alive. We might be a little tattered like the leaves on this flower, but we're here and we're alive. And let's give thanks for that. There are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. So let's awaken to the awareness that everything in life is a miracle, including our difficult and our challenging experiences. It's not easy to approach life this way, but it can be extremely powerful. Typically, we give thanks only for the good things in life, quote unquote, but by practicing radical gratitude, saying thank you to all those quote unquote bad things that come our way, including suffering, can help us grow and help us lead our best life. So before I dive into the talk, I want you to take a moment right now, and you can sit, no matter what is going on in your life or how you might be feeling at this moment, and just name to yourself, or you can put it in the chat, a difficulty, a stress, a challenge, something that may be causing you to suffer. So just reflect on that, name it. And then think about how what you're experiencing might be able to help you learn and grow. There's always something good that can come from a quote unquote bad thing, even the most horrific things. And let me tell you, I've experienced huge loss. My brother took his own life. I've suffered myself. Those around me have suffered. So I know that these are bad things, but something good can come from them. And it's just a matter of finding it. So think about that and give thanks for what you can learn from and how you can grow from this difficulty, this stress, this challenge. This practice of radical gratitude, giving thanks for those bad things in our life, will really help you move forward as a stronger version of yourself, filled with joy, so that you can truly, truly live your best life. So with that, here's an overview of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I'm going to be talking about some of the potential origins of mental distress. I am a psychiatrist, and so we typically do focus on when things have gone wrong. And so we're going to start with that, but then we're going to move into how things can go right. We're going to talk about human flourishing, how you can thrive, the pathways to flourishing, the impact of the pandemic on flourishing, and how you can take steps to flourish. And I want to acknowledge a huge debt to my colleague at Harvard, Tyler Vanderweel, who has provided the scientific basis for a lot of what I'm going to be presenting today. So what are the origins of mental distress? How do things go awry in our lives? You know, people come to me and other psychiatrists or healthcare professionals with problems in their mental life. And I like to think about where those problems might come from. Does it come from what one has? Is it a disease? Does it come from who one is? Is it part of one's personality? Does it come from what someone might be doing? Their actions, their behaviors, their habits? And or, because often it's 3 or more of these things, does the problem, the mental distress, come from what someone has encountered, their life story? So mental distress can originate from something that one has, something that comes upon them unbidden, a disease like dementia, like traumatic brain injury, like schizophrenia, like manic depressive illness, and some forms of major depression. It's a broken part or function in the brain that is the explanation for what one is experiencing. But mental distress can also arise from who one is, from one's personality dimensions. Now, dimensions are these universal, graded, measurable ways of thinking or feeling. So IQ is one dimension, and people can have problems in their life because of their high IQ, believe it or not, or low IQ, or other cognitive or thinking problems. People vary in the strength of their emotions. And so that can be another dimension of their personality that causes problems. If you feel things really strongly or really weakly, especially, you can get into problems. Some people are more extroverted, or some people are more introverted. And depending on the situation, that can cause one's problems. There's openness. People vary on the degree of how open and risk-taking they are. And agreeableness, people vary on that. Some people are very agreeable, overly agreeable, and some people are problematically disagreeable. And then conscientious is another personality dimension. Some people are very conscientious. They do what they say they're going to do. They don't break promises. They clean up after their socks if they're asked to. And other people are less conscientious. And like height or weight, there's not an absolutely bad or good personality, but it really depends on the situation. Sometimes it's good to have weakly felt emotions. Other times it can get in your way. So mental stress can also originate from what one does, from a behavior. And there are 2 kinds of behaviors. There are those innate behaviors that we have innate drives for to continue our species or our own self: eating, sleeping, sex. And those can all go awry, right? You can have eating disorders, sleep disorders, sexual disorders. And then there's acquired behaviors. These are not what we have innate drives for. It doesn't help our survival or our species survive. But our brain functions can be hijacked, that the ones that would support eating or feeding or sleeping or sex. And then they can cause problematic acquired behaviors like problems with gambling or substance use disorders. And then finally, mental stress can also arise from what one has encountered in one's life. This is from the meaning that we give to our experiences, how we deal with experiences. Examples of life story problems are grief, post-traumatic stress disorder, anticipatory anxiety. And remember how that radical gratitude can change the meaning that we give experiences? Well, that can help, the story we tell ourselves can help improve our mental health and help us live our best life. So what does a good life look like? To understand that, we need to consider this topic of human flourishing. So our institutions and academic disciplines often aspire to these grand visions of human flourishing. Since 1948, and every year, it's still on their website, the World Health Organization has defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The positive psychology field, which developed at the University of Pennsylvania, defines positive psychology as the scientific study of the strengths that enable individuals and communities to thrive. So again, another definition of flourishing. But in practice, our discussions and our studies are often really restricted to specific disease states, simple measures of feeling happy, or how much money we have. So what are the definitions of flourishing? So the Oxford English Dictionary defines flourishing as growing or developing in a healthy or vigorous way. The American Heritage Dictionary defines flourishing as doing or faring well. What's the root of the word flourish? It comes from the Latin florere, to bloom, to blossom, to flower. And that word flourishing is often used to translate Aristotle's term eudaimonia, which has also been translated as happiness. Flourishing or complete human well-being is that state in which all aspects of your life are good. I would say flourishing is what we are after as individuals and should be seeking as a society. There are numerous measures of well-being that have appeared in the positive psychology literature, but they're really absent from most measures of flourishing. Health is not generally considered an aspect of flourishing, but how can we fully flourish if we're not healthy? And character and virtue, also not included in these measures of flourishing. But how can we be fully flourishing if we're not living virtuous lives, if we're thieving or lying? So Tyler Vanderweel at Harvard wondered if it was possible to actually measure flourishing and to do so in a way that included physical health and these aspects of character and virtue, and that was also valid around the world. It's a big challenge. So he sought first to identify domains of flourishing around which people from different cultures and philosophical and theological traditions might reach consensus. And these are the results of Vanderweel's efforts. He identified these 5 domains of human flourishing: happiness and life satisfaction, physical and mental health, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, and close social relationships. And he recognizes that these things don't exhaust the world of flourishing, but they all are really part of it. And you don't have to have every one of these aspects of flourishing to be able to flourish, but each of these domains satisfies 2 criteria. One, these are nearly universally desired. Everybody around the world wants to be happy, wants to have physical health, wants to have a sense of meaning and purpose, wants to be a good person, wants close social relationships. So they're nearly universally desired, and each of these is an end in itself. It's not like you want to be happy so you can do something else, or you want to have meaning and purpose so you can do something else. You want these things because they are goods in themselves. So he developed a short index with 2 questions chosen in each of those domains based on what is already regularly in use in the field of positive psychology and has been validated. And then he proposed the character and virtue questions, and that's really based on the philosophical and psychological literature on the cardinal virtues: practical wisdom, justice, fortitude, moderation. So this tool can be used to measure flourishing at any given point in time. So there are 10 questions, 10 items. And so you rate yourself on each item on a scale of 0 to 10. And so your total flourishing index would be a number on the 0 to 10 because you divide by 10. We'll go through this. I want to invite you to do a self-assessment on your level of flourishing in each of these domains. You can do this in your head, or you can grab a paper and pencil and actually write down where you feel you are on a 0 to 10 scale, with 0 being the least satisfied here and 10 being the most satisfied or the best rating. So how satisfied are you with your life as a whole these days? I'm going to write this down for myself. In general, how happy do you usually feel? How would you rate your physical health, with 0 being terrible, 10 being the best it could be? And your mental health? How would you rate that? Overall, to what extent do you feel the things you do in your life are worthwhile? And then how strongly do you agree with this statement? With 0, that you totally disagree, and 10, you fully agree. I understand my purpose in life. What about this one? I always act to promote good in all circumstances, even in difficult and challenging situations. I am always able to give up some happiness now for greater happiness later. These are tough questions. And finally, these last 2 items. I'm content with my friendships and relationships. My relationships are as satisfying as I would like them to be. So what you would do is you would add your scores for those 10 items. And if you rated everything as a 0, your total score there would be 0. And if you rated everything as a 10, your total score would be 100. So most people are somewhere between 0 and 100. And then you divide that number, which is an easy task to do, by 10. And then you'll get your final score, and it will be somewhere on a scale of 0 to 10. And you can kind of just eyeball, I think, those numbers and have a sense of whether you're a 3 or a 6 overall. So what are the benefits of that exercise, that self-assessment? Well, I would say it's an opportunity for self-reflection. You know, you're needing to think about these questions, which you might not really take time to think about usually, and a chance to identify areas that you could improve or make changes in your life to have more flourishing. And you could do this serially. You could do this once a month, once a year, and you could track your flourishing over time. What people have said that have engaged in this exercise is that the questions, especially some more than others, made them stop and think. And it was eye-opening to see the areas that they really need to work on, or maybe even see the areas that they were doing better than they might have expected. It's a relief just to have someone ask, someone to check in, and to identify areas where they could ask for help themselves. Some of them can catch people off guard, especially that question around meaning and purpose. It's not something a lot of people think about. But in reflecting on that, people are finding that they're missing a greater purpose and realizing that they need to reach out to help more or to give back. Maybe not a problem for caregivers. So now that we have an idea of what flourishing consists of, what we might be aiming for, we want to kind of switch gears and think about how do we get there. So again, these are the domains of flourishing: happiness and life satisfaction, physical and mental health, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, close social relationships. But Vanderwill asked, what pathways are common and have large effects on these domains? So he's a statistician and an epidemiologist, and he did a very large literature review of many decades-long epidemiologic studies where people were asked questions. Thousands of people were asked hundreds of questions, asking them, how they would rate themselves in terms of some of these outcomes, not all of them, because this model wasn't available then, but some of these, how happy are you? And then he looked at other things that they answered questions about. And he identified these 4 pathways to flourishing, and he actually drew causal links between them, cause and effect, because these were decades-long studies. It wasn't just a cross-section. And he could look at the way they answered some questions and the way they answered these flourishing domain questions. And he found that there were 4 pathways to flourishing: family, work, education, and religious community. Now, these 4 are not exhaustive. Other pathways may have important effects, but they may be less common. And some questions about, say, other kinds of communities weren't really asked in these. So you can't really say that it's only a religious community, but this was where he had information. These 4 are also not all necessary. One can flourish even in the absence of one or more of these pathways. But each one of these pathways is common. Most people have family, work, education, and are part of a community, especially a religious community. And each one of these powerfully affects the domains of flourishing. And because he's interested in public health, he's also wondering if public policy that would support these pathways would result in more flourishing as a society. And there's not going to be a test on this, but this is the model that he developed from his work. And again, these are the domains of flourishing here, and these are the pathways. And each of these lines is connecting a pathway to a domain of flourishing, and each has these little numbers associated with it. These are the studies that he found for each of these that causally linked. So some didn't have as much data behind it, like family and meaning and purpose only had 1 study. Education and meaning and purpose only had 1 study, but some of them had 10 studies that supported those outcomes. So thinking about flourishing and these pathways to flourishing, what was the pandemic's impact on flourishing? And just thinking about those pathways, you can kind of imagine work, education, religious community, family. There were a lot of disruptions that the pandemic had on those pathways. So it's not really surprising that we see that January 2020, 1,000 people were given the flourishing measure. So that's pre-pandemic. And then in June 2020, pretty much at the height of the pandemic, 3,000 people were given the flourishing survey. And what happened? Well, happiness and life satisfaction went down. Physical and mental health went down. Meaning and purpose went down. Character and virtue stayed the same. Close social relationships went down a little. We didn't talk about this financial and material stability piece. It's not really a true domain of flourishing because it isn't an end in itself, right? Having a lot of money in and of itself isn't going to make you happy. It's what that money can bring to you in terms of these other aspects of your life. Of course, that took a big hit. And overall, the flourishing index went down. So that was from January 2020 to June 2020. And of interest, these drops that were seen at the height of the pandemic were worse in young adults and older people than they were in middle age. So the younger people and the older people were hit the most by that, by the pandemic in terms of their flourishing. So by January 2022, in most age groups, the flourishing scores are more or less the same that they were pre-pandemic. So they went back to that January 2020 number. And that was for almost every age group, including the older adults. So the older adults had been hit hard by the pandemic, but by January 2022, they were back to pre-pandemic ratings. An exception is young adults. So people who are 18 to 25 as a group are not doing well across multiple domains of well-being. So this is the January 2022 data. And at the left, you have the Gen Z, the 18 to 25-year-olds. And here at the gray bar, you have the silent generation, 77 and older. Here's my group, the boomers. And you can see post the height of the pandemic, so January 2022, these older groups who had been low, they had been down here on each of these measures, they're back up. And so as you get older, you flourish more. I think that that steep gradient seen with age is great for us older folks, but it's pretty concerning for the younger folks. So young adults report being less happy and healthy, having less meaning and poorer relationships, having more struggles with character, being less financially stable than older people. And these differences are much larger than differences in well-being found across gender or race. Speculations as to why young adults have not bounced back after the height of the pandemic in terms of their flourishing is one, economic. Their housing costs are increasing, inflation's high, there's substantial education debt. There is this crisis in meaning. Religions and philosophies have traditionally supplied these, but religious participation has declined substantially, and especially among youth and young adults. There's also this crisis in identity. There are many questions now around gender identity and other forms of identity that young people are especially engaged in. There's geopolitical events and concerns that weigh on the younger people, the pandemic itself, global warming, war. It's hitting younger people harder in terms of their thinking, and technology and social media use. On average, and especially for high rates of use, the effect on well-being of social media use is negative. And social media use, as we know, is considerably higher among young people. So younger people are in that stage of life as well, in which relationships and communities are being formed, and opportunities for forming these communities have been really severely interrupted by the pandemic in the past couple of years. And those who are older, who've had established relationships and are part of a longer-term community, have perhaps been better able to weather the pandemic over the past couple of years. They rebounded, as I said. So the way forward, as a society, we need to help people of all generations to thrive. We need to foster systems of meaning and deeper engagement with those fundamental questions of life. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to lead a good life? We need greater discipline on our social media use, from individuals to communities to corporations. And we need to rebuild our relationships and our communities. But how can you as an individual flourish? Well, there are some tips. There are cognitive exercises. I'm going to go into each of these briefly. There are actions you can take. There are ways to engage in relationships and institutions, and ways to address mental distress. So those cognitive exercises, that radical gratitude, brings joy, promotes flourishing. Savoring and recognizing both the good and the bad. Really important to bringing joy to your life and putting those bad things in perspective and drawing meaning and opportunities for growth from even the worst experiences in our lives. Important to imagine your best self, to have high expectations, to be hopeful, to be optimistic. Use your character strengths. Recognize what your strengths are and build on those. Work to become more virtuous. Practice acts of kindness. Brings great joy and meaning and purpose. Volunteering. There are ways to engage in relationships and institutions. There's job crafting, which is really creating jobs in which there is more meaning and purpose, or bringing more meaning and purpose to your job. Religious service attendance, highly correlated to flourishing, and actually is highly correlated to surviving mental health crises, much less likely to have suicide if you're a religious service attender. And then marriage, clearly linked to multiple domains of flourishing. Ways to address mental distress. Again, seek professional help to understand the origin of the distress. That's really important. Is this something you have? Is this arising from, who you are, who the person is? Is this something that you're doing that's causing these problems? Or is it the meaning that you're giving something that you've encountered? And develop a treatment plan. Again, this is, not everything is a disease. Everybody has a personality. Everybody has a life story. So even if you have a disease, taking into consideration the meaning you give that, or what meaning that's had in your life, how you've dealt with that, how you've responded to that emotionally is really important to recovering fully and actually going on to flourish, not just having an absence of disease, but thriving. And then there are self-help books. Feeling Good is one of my favorites. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy handbook, actually, and a book. Full Catastrophe Living, that is a book that's a secular book about mindfulness practices. And then The Path to Forgiveness, again, also an important part of healing and flourishing. So to be alive in this beautiful, self-organizing universe, to participate in the dance of life with senses to perceive it, lungs that breathe it, organs that draw nourishment from it, this is a wonder beyond words. Gratitude for the gift of life is the primary wellspring of all religions. It's the hallmark of the mystic. It's the source of all true art. And as you become aware that everything is a miracle, and you're able to view the world through that lens of wonder, you can tap into that healing power of gratitude to live your best life. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Now, for those of you who have questions, and Dr. Chisolm will be happy to answer them, put them into the Q&A, and Morgan Zachary will read those to us. I want to start off with a question, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, Dr. Chisolm, but how do we compare flourishing with other countries around the world? Are there countries, I'm thinking of East Asia, Japan and Korea, where people are a lot more happy than we are, or less happy?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There are these countries, and Denmark is the one that keeps going to the top of every list. There are these countries where there is greater flourishing. Of interest, even though Denmark is a high socioeconomic status country, there are many lower, quote unquote, lower socioeconomic status countries, developing countries, where people are flourishing more than we're flourishing here. So it's not all tied to financial and material stability. But I'm glad you asked that question, because Tyler Vanderweel has a multi-million-dollar grant. I think it's maybe $80 million to partner with Gallup, and he's going to be giving the flourishing measure, get this, to basically half of the world's population.
Wow.
Not half of the countries, half of the world's population, to really get at this question. And he's going to be giving the flourishing measure also to people over time so that he can test this model with study, because he was building this model based on studies that weren't designed to look at flourishing and the pathways to flourishing. So he's designed a study that will actually look at that, ask the right questions to see if this model really is valid and if it's valid all over the world. So stay tuned. You may be one of the people that's contacted by Gallup to complete this flourishing measure. So it's going to be it's a big deal, and it's going to help answer that question about flourishing in other countries. But clearly, we're not above average in flourishing.
Now, before you put the spotlight on Denmark, I assumed that warmer climates, Tahiti, Hawaii, people were happy and flourishing, but weather in Denmark is nothing like weather in Tahiti.
Oh yeah, it's all about, you got to just have the right gear, right? So no, they love their coffee breaks and their fires and their, they make it cozy.
I like that. Now, Morgan, do we have any questions, or are we going to be able to send Dr. Chisolm on her way?
Yeah, Ron, I don't have any questions right now. Oh, just as you asked that, I see a new one pop up. Doctor, if you don't mind, Yvonne asked, when seeking professional help for anxiety/stress, would a person seek out a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist or an LPC to help dive in and answer these questions for individuals about flourishing?
It's a great question. So I think the thing that you really want from my perspective is you want somebody that's going to get to know you as a person, and that's going to get to know your personality in all those domains that we talked about, and get to know the things that you've encountered in your life so that they can put into context what's going on now in that life context, right? So when I see somebody as a psychiatrist, I say, well, we're going to talk about what brought you in, but I want to start with getting to know you as a person, who you are, what you've experienced in life, so I can better put this into that context. And so I think that's the most important thing. I don't think the degrees, which degrees someone has, really matters. I think what matters is the questions they ask you in terms of, and you can bring some of these responses to them. Actually, you can go online, and what I described in that personality slide, the openness and all that, that's a 5-factor model. If you Google NEO, NEO, personality inventory, you can get a free online survey, so you can have an idea that you can bring to them. I would say you want somebody that's going to really ask a lot of questions, get to know you as a person, and then be able to develop a treatment plan that really considers the multiple origins of anxiety, which is usually a lot. And then once your anxiety starts getting better, you're able to start working on some of the other aspects of your life, the flourishing aspects. You don't have to be completely well mentally to flourish. There's plenty of studies that show that people who still have symptoms and are still have impaired functioning are able to flourish. But it is nice to kind of get the acute anxiety over with before you start, working on building a job, more meaningful job, and things like that.
A couple of quick questions that were put into the chat. How about a clinical social worker? Linda asks, as a mental health professional, we tend to get left out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many types of therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, nurse practitioners, PhD psychologists. Yeah, I don't think the training degree is so important. I think more importantly are the people asking you the questions so that they can kind of recognize you as a whole person.
And one of our panelists asked this question of you. What is the difference between happiness and flourishing?
Yeah, so I would say that happiness is one part of flourishing, but you can imagine there's some short-lived happinesses that we have, or there might be some superficial happinesses like, that beach in Tahiti or whatever. But it's not enough, I would say, to just be happy. I mean, you can be happy and be a very bad person, for instance, and I wouldn't say you are flourishing. Or you can be happy and have no social connections or relationships, and I would say that that's not truly flourishing. So I think happiness is one aspect of flourishing, but it's not. I think one needs more and one aspires to more than just happiness.
Well, this is perfect. And I want to remind our folks who are either watching live in a setting around the state of Texas or elsewhere, or online, that this is being recorded and you can go back once it's posted and listen and see Dr. Chisholm's presentation again. Dr.
And
Chisholm,
Ron,
thank
we
you.
do have one
Yes.
more
Oh,
question. I'm so
okay.
sorry. So just real quick, doctor, thank you again for your time. Carla described and asked, she said her mom is 91 years young. She has dementia, but they lost dad in 2020 due to a heart attack, and mom had a fall in January, so she's at a facility getting therapy. So with that, she asked, how important is it to go to a geriatric psychiatrist or psychologist?
Well, I think that those are ideal, but they're in short supply. So, there are just not enough geriatric psychiatrists or gerontologists, geriatric medicine trained folks to go around. I do think it's ideal because they have deeper training in the problems of older adults, but it's not always going to be feasible. So if you can access care, that would be great. But if not, I think sometimes we have to educate our providers, right? Sometimes we have to be the ones that ask the questions to point people in the direction of some of the scientific literature or some of the studies. So I would say if you can't find a geriatric psychiatrist or a geriatric medicine trained internist or primary care physician, really important to increase your own knowledge and advocate so that you can bring things to the attention of people who may not have as much expertise as you do.
Let
Thank
me.
you so much. And I'm sorry, Ron.
Okay, Morgan, I had another question. If I
Okay,
can
yeah.
throw it and take
Uh-huh.
advantage of my being here with an insatiable mind looking for more answers. For those who are interested in more of your thinking on flourishing, do you have a website where people can go?
Well, I do have a website. I wish I knew the URL for the McHugh Program Flourishing website, but I did put in the slide deck, which I hope will be available. I did put the Harvard Flourishing Program, and if you Google Harvard Flourishing Program, that will come up.
Cool.
And that's where a lot of the scientific basis for this is. My website, the Flourishing website at Hopkins, is mainly focused on, I'm mainly focused on educating other clinicians to help them help their patients flourish. And then the other thing, I do have a website, Margaret Chisholm, MD, .com, which has a link to other materials that I've written about flourishing.
Now, let me put you on the spot here for just a minute. Do you practice and take that self-analysis yourself?
Oh, yes, I do. Many times I have all my numbers written down here. I think for me, it's a really good practice to say, wow, this is not a good day, or this is consistently low, and it's something I really have to make an effort to improve.
I was guessing you'd average around 8.
I haven't added it up, but it doesn't look quite that high.
Well, thank you so much. We so much appreciate your being with us and sharing your knowledge. I participated in a lot of the online courses that colleges and universities offer for folks. And I don't know if you participate in any of those, but they're great ways to get additional information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I want to share with our participants today in the Caregiver Summit the sponsors who have helped make this possible. Our title sponsor, United Healthcare, our diamond sponsor, Vitas Healthcare, our platinum sponsors, GB Moreno and Associates and PTT Financial, our gold sponsor, Volver Casa, another silver sponsor, World Voices Media, another silver sponsor, New Life Hospice, Latinx Voices, River City Credit Union, Healthcare Unlimited, and our bronze sponsors, Golden Outlook, Bridges at Mission, Trinity Hospice, and our providing CEU sponsor, Sage Care Management. And they're on the screen for those of you who want to take a look at them. And we thank you so much for helping to support the Caregiver Summit. Larry Moreno is with us. He's with GB Moreno and Associates, one of our platinum sponsors, and we're delighted to hear from him. Larry, take it away.
Hello all, can you hear me, see me?
I hear you fine.
Okay, very well. Hi, my name is Larry Moreno, president of GB Moreno and Associates. We're a proud sponsor to support WellMed's Caregiver Wellness Program. We acknowledge their mission in supporting seniors and their caregivers. GB Moreno is an insurance agency. We assist in helping disabled and seniors who are on Medicare with their health insurance. We assist them on prescription help, also Medicare Savings Program, as well as life insurance. We assist them in helping them understand their insurance. So hand in hand, we work with seniors on a daily basis. So looking at the caregiver program that WellMed is offering is an amazing, because as agents, we're in the in-home and we see a lot about what these seniors are going through, the good, the bad, and ugly. So I encourage agents that are out there to, view, when they're in the in-home talking about their insurance, to see, what else they can help out with. And so what I've learned a lot about the caregiver program is amazing. And so me as an agent as well has witnessed a lot of that happening, where the caregiver, is stressing out and going through a lot. And so it really helps us, to port them in the right direction with WellMed and the program that they have. So we're very proud sponsors and very, very amazed what they're doing. And so thank you so much for having us online.
Well, we appreciate it, and certainly appreciate your help in sponsoring this event. And I want to thank you very much, Larry Moreno. All right, get ready to exercise, as they say. Michelle Martinez from the Ovira Cisneros Senior Center in San Antonio will be leading us in some stretching exercises. And we've all been sitting here for well over an hour now. So let's get ready to go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle with the Woman Charitable Foundation in San Antonio, Texas, and I'd like to take you through a quick exercise routine to keep your blood flowing and your muscles stretched. We're going to start off, we're going to be doing a little bit of upper, mid, and lower body today. We're going to start off with our arms right at our side. We want to sit nice and tall in our chair, feet flat on the ground, good posture as well. Arms at our side, we're going to bring them out and up, extending the body. And we're going to bring them right back down, opening out to the side, right back down at our side. We're going to do about 3 more of those. Bring them out and up, and bring the arms slowly right back down to the side. We're going to control the movement at all times. Make sure you're breathing. Arms out and up and down. We're going to do that one more time. Arms out and up, and slowly bring them down. Very good. From here, we're going to bring the arms out to the side. We're going to be working our back, our mid-back. We're stretching that area, but we're going to start off out here. Arms at our side, we're going to touch our shoulders. And you want to bring your arms right in front of you. Now we're trying to get the elbows in front of you, touching, so we should be directly in front of you. We're gonna hold that and slowly open out. You should feel the center of the shoulder blades stretching right in the center there. And bring them right back in. Hold it and open out. The movement should be nice and slow. Once again, together. And open. I'm going to do that one more time, so about 4 each here. And open them out. Very good. Arms to our side. We're going to give our upper body a little bit of a break now. We're going to move into our lower body. So we're going to do a hamstring stretch. We're going to place our right heel on the ground. We're going to point the toe towards the body, and the leg should be completely straight. This is our support here, so make sure the other foot is flat on the ground. We're going to bring our right arm now and reach that straight in front of you, not down, just reach straight in front. And hold and breathe. And slowly bring that right back in. We're going to do the next leg. So this one is flat on the ground. This is our support now. So we're going to place our left heel on the ground. The toe towards the body, pointing towards the body. Leg again, completely straight. Left arm reach straight in front. And hold, right hamstring stretch. Hold and breathe. Very good. Bring that right back in. This time we're going to place both feet on the ground. Make sure your plants are on the ground. This is for our stability. This is our base. We want to make sure we're nice and straight. Feet on the ground. This is going to be stretching our midsection. We're going to start with the arms. We're going to bring the arms straight in front together. Fingers are pointing directly in front of you. And as we open up, when I say open up the arm, we're going to let the body turn with you. So we're going to start with our right side. So open to the right and turn the torso, turn the body as the arm reaches back. And slowly bring that right back in, making up in front. Now keeping the right arm here in front, the left arm is now going to open out to the side, letting the body follow as you reach back. And bring that right back in, right to the front. We're going to do it one more on each side. Open right back up to the right again. Turning the body. And slowly bringing it back in. And last time, open to the left. And bring it right back in slowly. Very good. We're going to bring the arms right at our side. With the upper and midsection of break, we're going to go into the lower half. We're going to stretch our ankles. So we're going to lift up the legs slightly. And we're going to do an ankle rotation. Am I going counterclockwise right now? You can go counter or clockwise. We're going to switch anyways. We're going to do the main thing is that it's all directions. Side, forward, back, nice and slow in all directions. And then we're going to alternate the direction so we get both angles. Switch to the opposite leg. Same thing, ankle rotation. Slow and controlled, all directions. And switch. And set it down. Very good. I hope you guys enjoyed the stretches this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Ron, and good morning to everyone on the call. My name is Dick Coons, and I'm the Vice President of Growth and Business Development with WellMed, and speaking on behalf of United, who is our largest partner across the country, everywhere. And on behalf of them, they wanted to make sure that I made all of you aware that during this time of annual enrollment period, which runs until December 7th, that if you have questions about Medicare and health plans and the like, they want you to give them a call, and they want to talk to you about that. And the worst case scenario is you compare with what you currently have, or for those loved ones that you're caring for and looking after who have questions. They want you to know that there's a great hotline for you to call and a great website for you to go to. And I just wanted to share that with you on behalf of them. And so let me provide you this number, which is toll-free 866-465-3130. That's 866-465-3130. And then they've got a good website for you to also go and get information that will be helpful to you as well. And that website is uhcmedicaresolutions.com. uhcmedicaresolutions.com. And it's just really important, because this is a hectic, very confusing time of year for everyone with the annual enrollment, and there's just a lot of commercials and a lot of things out there, and there's a lot of questions, and it is confusing. Medicare is confusing. And so we got a terrific partner with United, and between United and WellMed providing the healthcare for you. It's just a really, really terrific offer of care for everyone. So with that, Ron, I just wanted to speak on behalf of United and, just provide that information to everybody. And hopefully that's
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much. Dick Coons. I want to do a special shout out. Tina Smith, who is the boss of bosses for this Caregiver Summit, suggested I give a shout out to the live sessions that are taking place as we speak. Corpus Christi, Harlingen, Brownsville, McAllen, Dallas, and here in San Antonio at the Cisneros, Lopez, and District 2 senior centers. I'd asked you earlier, get a picture of your group to Tina, and we'd like to be able to put those up on the WellMed Charitable Foundation website and the Caregiver Summit information. We'll put it on Facebook as well to salute those of you who are in the live presentations, and we appreciate you doing that. 1 minute, and we're going to begin again, and we thank you so much for being with us. If you have questions or concerns, put them in the chat, and one of the key people here, Morgan Zachmeyer and others, will get back to you if you have a question, and we thank you for that. We see Dr. Jamie is all set and ready to go. We'll be with you in just a couple of minutes, Dr. Jamie. We appreciate you being with us. Thank you. I want to introduce Cynthia Hazel. Cynthia is a multi-gifted inspirational speaker and transformational therapist with a heart for service. She spent her entire career in service to others in both profit and nonprofit environments. In presentations and therapeutic sessions, Cynthia assists others to regain wellness. She is actively involved in the community and maintains social media pages to inform others on maintaining a grateful heart and gaining wellness tips. Cynthia has a special appreciation for the years she spent helping veterans with PTSD and chronic pain to live whole and recovered lives. And we look forward to this presentation on mindfulness. Take it away, Cynthia.
Well, thank you, Ron. I'm so excited to come and talk to all of you today, because I thought mindfulness would be good with the understanding that we experience compassion fatigue as caregivers, and we can be worn out and not even really know what's going on. So we're going to examine that, and I'll give you some mindful suggestions. With compassion fatigue, that's an extreme state of tension and stress, and it can result in you feeling hopeful, hopeless rather, indifferent, pessimistic. And when you lose disinterest in other people's issues and you're a caregiver, that can be a really dicey situation. Kristen Valentin is in New Jersey, a social worker, and she describes compassion fatigue for caregivers as something that's very critical to watch, because caregivers are empathetic by nature anyway, and if we let it go, it becomes a deep psychological response to stress. And then we're physically, psychologically, spiritually, even socially exhausted, and we can see where that would cause a lot of problems. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report said that anxiety, depression, and even serious consideration of suicide, these rates were much higher for unpaid family caregivers than for the general public. So here's what to look for in the signs. You might feel overwhelmed, exhausted, and drained. You just don't have that same level of joy for the activities that you used to do. You're not keeping up with your self-care or hygiene, and you don't want to be around your loved one. You're less patient, tolerant, you feel sad. You might be losing your temper more often, cynical, have trouble sleeping, and feel way more anxious. If you let these emotional things go, then you could wind up with headaches and stomach aches. And overall, it makes it very difficult to make care decisions. So when we're stressed, there's a tendency to walk away from the situation, but instead, I'm going to suggest that you recognize it, because stress can cause harm to the one that you care for. And one way to deal with that is mindfulness. You may have heard of John Kabat-Zinn. He's a professor of medicine at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. And while there, he created a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR. And that involves meditation and yoga to increase your awareness and reduce stress. What I like about MBSR is that it's evidence-based and it's a self-care strategy. So it's something you can easily put in place before things get too extreme. The MBSR program is about being present in the moment and being non-judgmental. And when we do this, we're able to see situations as they are and improves how we think and behave. So I'm going to mention 3 methods to you. And I like them because what you can do when your loved one is resting, the one you're caring for, and you can get some private time to yourself, that you can step away in another room, an area, and practice these. To do these exercises, sit up straight. You know, we have these wonderful exercises, and sitting up straight is always good. And we want to plant our feet firmly on the floor and not cross our legs. So the first one is going to be called conscious breathing. First thing we want to do is notice our breathing habits. So when we're stressed, we don't do that, okay? What we normally do is when we're stressed, we don't even know how we're breathing, and most of it is probably coming from the upper shoulder area. And if I was to say to you, breathe deeply at this point, you might be going, so continuing to breathe shallow creates a problem of us breathing in our own carbon dioxide, and we're not emptying out our lungs. And if we do that very long, we're going to wind up feeling very anxious because our brain will be alerted, telling us that our body's in danger. Instead, we can use a simple counting method by inhaling deeply from the abdomen and up through the body to a count of 4, holding our breath for a count of 5, and exhaling all the air out of our system, pushing it out to a count of 6. Now we're taking in enough air. And with continued effort, we'll calm down the amygdala portion of our brain where the fight or flight impulse is located, and we're going to feel safer. Healthy chemicals will begin to flow, our nervous system is regulated, and our body is back in balance. The second method is called loving kindness meditation. And this helps us to reduce stress and focus on extending kind and loving thoughts towards ourselves and others. So this is like the oxygen mask scenario on the plane where the stewardess tells us what to do. But instead, this is an emotional oxygen mask that we want to put on because we are stressed out. We use the same position and we think of a focal phrase. So the phrase I'd like us to dwell on is, may I be peaceful. You want to carve out that quiet time and spend at least 5 minutes sitting comfortably with your eyes closed. And as you're breathing in, say to yourself silently, may I be peaceful. And then breathe out, loving and kind thoughts to yourself. May I be peaceful. Breathe out, loving and kind thoughts to yourself, fully emptying your lungs. And continuing to do this will help you to experience wellness and inner peace. And focusing on these feelings will help to replace the tension with feelings of love. All right, now you've taken care of yourself, and that's very important. So the next thing you want to do is take care of your loved one. So I want you to repeat the same scenario, only going to just adjust it a little bit. Let's say you're taking care of mom and her name is Sarah. So the first scenario would be breathing in deeply and thinking to yourself, may Sarah be peaceful. And then breathing out those loving feelings that you're sending towards your mom. And continue this for about 5 minutes. This technique also works very well with people who are coping with the strains of long-term caregiving, because loving kindness meditation enhances the area of the brain involved in emotional processing, and that will help you to reduce negativity. The last method I'm going to mention to you is centering prayer. And this is a form of contemplative prayer that's rooted in Christian traditions and has a discipline of intentional silence where you empty yourself out completely and become receptive to divine love. Now, what I'd like you to do on this scenario is to focus on 1 or 2 words. We don't need a whole phrase, we just choose a word. And for demonstration, I've chosen the word peace. Okay. So as we breathe in, we're thinking peace. Then we breathe out and surrender. Breathe in, peace. Breathe out, surrender. One more time, breathe in, peace. And breathe out in sweet surrender. What I love about these exercises that if you continue to develop them long enough, you're going to find that you become more grounded and you'll experience temporary emotional and physical relief. Also, once that you're in the habit of practicing these exercises, you'll find it easier to forgive and self-accept, and your relationships will be strengthened. So we've discussed 3 ways that you can reduce compassion fatigue, and that is conscious breathing, loving meditation, and centering prayer. And I challenge you to remember to devote some time to your recovery, because you'll be glad you did. And as I close, I wish you well as you pursue these mindful methods to improve your relationship with your care recipient and yourself. Why? Because you're worth it.
Cynthia, thank you. Appreciate it. It's great to have you on with us. And on behalf of everybody, I'm feeling at least more relaxed. So thank you, Cynthia Hazel. Appreciate it.
Well, you're
Up
welcome.
next, a wonderful, wonderful presentation from a gentleman I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking with from time to time. And Jim Baker, for those of you who are wondering, has been a family caregiver for his wife, Kathleen, for 12 years. They moved from New York in 2009 to San Antonio to be closer to his son and grandchildren. Kathleen suffered a hemorrhagic stroke a year later in 2010. Jim shortly realized that he was a caregiver and needed support and help. He was introduced to a stroke support group after Kathy was discharged from the hospital. Jim began attending a local senior center, came across the Caregiver SOS support group, which he has continued to attend. Jim has been part of the stress busting program as well, and he is an active listener to our radio show and podcast, Caregiver SOS On Air. Jim understands the importance of self-care, the support you need as a caregiver, and reminds his peers every chance he gets to take care of yourself. So listen up. Here's Jim Baker.
I am Jim Baker, and I am a family caregiver. My wife, Kathy, and I moved here to San Antonio about 12 years ago from New York. And shortly after that, most unfortunately, she had a massive hemorrhagic stroke. Finally, after several months and the miracle of her survival during that time, it was time to be discharged. She could come home. And that meant for me 24/7 challenges caring for her. I had some technology classes at the Northeast Senior Center, and I noticed on the schedule a program, Caregiver SOS. I clearly needed help, and I started attending these monthly sessions. I began learning much more about the vast array of information that's available for family caregivers. And a number of these sessions really focused on the issue of self-help, self-care. But if I was going to help her, I had to be able to take care of myself. There was so much available through the program. I thought I could do this alone, but I could not. So now I have support. The key has been, though, working with the caregiver specialists, the experts, the monthly meeting. I also have my caregiver coach, Cindy, who I know I can call at any point if a situation comes up that needs some insight. It's through WellMed Charitable Foundation that this has been available to me, and I am grateful for this because it has made a much better life for myself and improved the quality of life of Kathy as she continues to improve from her situation.
Thank you so much, Jim Baker. Appreciate the work that you're doing, and appreciate the shout out to Cindy Robles, who does a great job for the Caregiver SOS program. Some of you have heard Dr. Jamie on a series that we do called Take 10 with Dr. Jamie and Carol Zernial. Dr. Jamie is the Chief Compassion Officer at WellMed, and he serves in that capacity for the WellMed Medical Management Team. He's a leading authority on caregiver burnout, compassion fatigue, and related addictions. His background in case management and family systems has been the foundation of his work throughout 30 years in his career. He is a fierce advocate for caregivers, integrated, patient-centered medicine, and a workforce in touch with its comprehensive wellness. He blogs for Psychology Today and the JoanLudden.com website. He writes for Connections and Caregiver SOS. He co-authored the acclaimed Take Your Oxygen First, Protecting Your Health and Happiness While Caring for a Loved One with Memory Loss. A popular and engaging speaker and a master of technology, as we can see, he is frequently called upon as a keynote speaker and to provide his expert opinion for the media. It is a privilege and an honor to introduce our co-host from Take 10 and so many other activities we have done together, none of which have caused us too much problems. Please welcome our good friend from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, barring a hurricane interrupting us. Here's Dr. Jamie.
Gosh, thank you so much for the intro. You know, when friends introduce you, it's just a whole different feeling. And I appreciate that, Ron. I appreciate you, Carol Zernial, heading up this wonderful event and really the charity, WellMed Charitable Foundation. And of course, Tina, who's our leader up there, over there, I should say, in San Antonio for caregiving. This is an honor and a privilege. I remember the summit from years and years ago when I was able to actually fly there in old days when we actually could do face-to-face. And I just loved it. I love the premise of it. I love the energy of it. Obviously, this is a hybrid. And so we're going to get together, I'm sure, in the years to come. But it's not quite as a therapist, as a psychologist, the optimum way, because the optimal way is the autonomic, being in front of each other, face to face, to feel each other's energy, our own nervous systems being comfortable in support. And that's what we need as caregivers. So I appreciate it. I want to do this presentation called Finding the Joy in Being a Family First Responder. Everyone there probably has had a fabulous day and listening to the speakers and being part of a summit that's really powerful, that really needs to happen more often across this country to honor caregivers, those who provide, $400 billion of in-kind care in our country, who would actually stop healthcare if they stop actually caregiving. That's how important they are. But we haven't seen that in America with our healthcare system. But we are seeing that more with efforts like the WellMed Charitable Foundation and other organizations. But today, I wanted this sort of, if I will, umbrella topic of finding the joy, letting you go home and understanding that there is no silver bullet, as we all know, that the joy is in our hands, and that you're a family first responder. Why I call you that is my first work in healthcare was with first responders as a therapist, cops, firemen, emergency medical technicians, right? These were people who ran in the burning homes while others were running out. And so I had a joy in working with them and finding their joy through burnout and stress and compassion fatigue. And I am a compassion fatigue therapist, was very difficult. But I always said it's in your own hands. So what I'd like to do real briefly with you, and just to clear your mind, and it's wonderful, the speakers before me, the mindfulness-based stress reduction that John Kabat-Zinn so masterfully pioneered in Massachusetts, and the fabulous caregiver in terms of his own story, where we connect with stories and support groups. And those are really great kind of entries to what we're about to do here, because I want to get you in touch with the breath work at the end and why that works so well. But I really first want to clear our minds just for 15 seconds as a trauma therapist. And I'm going to ask you to reflect back, obviously, on the day, maybe even before you got here, okay? What is your why that you showed up to this summit today? What was the reason that you signed up, came here and listened to these fabulous speakers and wonderful energy, okay? If you'll close your eyes, and when I click my fingers, take 15 seconds to go inside and try to find that why, starting now. All right, come back, open your eyes, come back to the summit. The power of why you came here can't be understated enough, okay? It can't be overstated enough. Internal motivation is always better than external motivation. We as caregivers usually, and it's unfortunate, I'm going to get into that, have a mask sometimes that the external motivation, the people, the places and things, the attaboy, attagirl, thank you for doing this, is really what matters. But if you have an internal motivation, which is awareness, right? It's always better. It's a river of life that runs within you. It never runs dry. It gives you really the why, the purpose, and the dream, which is so important to hold on to as we, provide caregiving. It is a challenging thing. We're not often honored in the way we are, so we need to honor ourselves. So that little child in the back of my shoulder, she's my kid. I'm an AARP daddy, just like Ron. And Ron and I talk often on radio about this, but often when I feel depressed or anxious or not really ready or stressed to come to work, that is my why. That's my lily pad. So if you couldn't find that why there, I think you all did, why you came here. That one is my lily pad and my safety, my parachute, if you will. I would love it to always be me, but she's my curveball in life. She's, what can I say? Her mom's Buddhist and an acupuncturist, and I'm Jewish and a Holocaust surviving father I come from. And so she's our buju. And she's like the legacy of why we do what we do. But the former speaker talked about, taking your oxygen first already. Well, I was very fortunate and privileged to write a book called Take Your Oxygen First in 2006 with Dr. Rosemary Laird and Lisa Gibbons. and we followed her life as a caregiver to her mom who had Alzheimer's. Why we do and talk and reference so often, take your oxygen first, not just our verbiage, but universal verbiage, is when I called the Federal Aviation Association, right, and asked them why they always said that, because I was this codependent hero child and I would help the person before me all the time too. And that's a natural default for a caregiver. The gentleman in Washington, D.C. said, sir, sometimes people do live when there's a plane crash. And if you haven't taken the oxygen first, okay, you have 19 seconds of useful consciousness, okay? If you haven't taken it, both of you are sure to perish. And at that time, I went back to Lisa and Dr. Laird and I said, we have our title, right? It was real. It was actually legislated and mandated. And there was a reason for it, far beyond anything else. So I want to say, if you want to find joy and take that home and all the fabulous speakers and things you've done today, you have the ability to do this journey, and it's actually your brain. It's your neurological self. It's all in your hands. Listen, as a therapist, and I'm Jungian trained years ago, I have seen the evolution of psychology. And in the 1980s, we finally started understanding the brain in a very powerful way. We realized we could change our brains, and we could do that in terms of our own selves by becoming our own trauma therapists. And I think family caregivers really can be their own therapists, while, of course, hopefully they're seeing somebody else. But I want you to understand a gentleman who I sit on the advisory board, it's called the Polyvagal Institute, who is absolutely a master of where we're going in the future with brain science and how it applies to you as a caregiver or to children or to parents, is Dr. Gabor Mate. And I'd love for you to go to YouTube and check him out. He's an absolute pioneer and will help you as a caregiver really get in touch with these two incredible essential things we talk about in our lives that the child only wanted and the adult seeks, which is authenticity and a healthy attachment. So the most difficult thing for me and most people is when you think that how you feel is because what the other person does. Think about that for a second. Dr. Mate is talking about us a little bit, about caregiving. Literally, when we slip into the hero child of the codependent, this is what he's saying. It's the most difficult thing, that we're actually looking at ourselves based upon what the other person does. We do this all around our country. We do it all around the world. In fact, in work sites, we do this. We have to find our center and our authenticity, who we are inside of us, our truth. And we do that literally. As a neuropsychologist, I'll tell you, befriending your neurosystem. When I sit on this board, which is, I started it, several years back, it began in 1996. This board was comprised of people who really would love therapy, and as I do, and believe that we should go in and have a safe place to talk. But emotional flashbacks, going back to what happened as a child, really sometimes wasn't the most helpful thing. It would only trigger us. Well, we started seeing that this was more about our nervous system being impacted as a child, okay? And caregivers take their neurosystem into the work of caregiving. We take care of our mom or dad or brother or sister, and we get triggered a lot of childhood things. So the caregiver journey begins with befriending your neurosystem. I'm going to tell you how, okay? We have this ventral, vagal, sympathetic, and dorsal, but it's basically being an emotional self-regulator of your own stress, literally. And the other is to hang around healthy people only. Literally, the neurosystem, our autonomic system, needs safety. Just like I was mentioning in the beginning, when we're all face-to-face in non-toxic, healthy ways, we really calm each other down. The only time I feel extraordinarily calm my neurosystem the most, my medicine, is when I lay down or read, a story to my child, and somehow my nervous system feels good. So Dr. Mate said, when you shut down emotion, you're also affecting your immune system, your nervous system. So the repression, keeping that emotion aside, is a survival strategy. It becomes also a source of physiological illness later. What he's talking about is cortisol levels, inflammation, that the body keeps the score. Your mind can do anything. It can distract, it can deny, it can project, it can make excuses, but your body keeps the score, meaning it can't move, it just gets sicker. So the joy I want to send you home with is the joy in being true. Authenticity, that of which the child only sought, okay? And basically this is it, right? People have two needs, and this is the beauty of it. Attachment, which is a healthy attachment to your primary loved one, if you will, and to the world, and authenticity. Okay. You only wanted that from your mom or dad when you were a child. Unconditional love, sit with me while I cried, and just hold me. So when authenticity threatens attachment, however, just understands this: attachment trumps authenticity. Gabor was pretty, and I said on the board with him, as I said, when I asked him about this, he says, listen, Jamie, really authenticity is the key. It's enlightenment. But what we tend to do is make the other person happy and connect with them. So sometimes attachment does trump it, and it does have to be like that. But if you're a caregiver looking for joy in this process and being reminded of joy, or just to find joy, authenticity heals you. I mean, it's messy, but it heals you. It is taking your oxygen first. It is finding your why. We're finding out that authenticity is the highest state of being that the spiritual practitioner can achieve. Okay, it's not enlightenment. In fact, the years to come, authenticity is going to become the replacement for enlightenment as a true goal. It means the baby basically crying at 2 years old and not being shoved into timeout, not being told it doesn't matter, not being said children should be seen and not heard, but holding ourselves, saying it's okay to cry. It's okay to be truthful. It's okay to be honest with people. Listen, they can get their own therapist if they're upset with it, but that's who we need to be. Okay. So what I mentioned when I had you go down to the why, I hope you came out with, you're here for awareness today in the summit. You're open-minded because awareness is the beginning of transformation. And in therapy, it's only a process: awareness, transformation, and finding self-love. Okay, once you're aware, you're no longer naive, and you got to find transformation. It comes in many ways. You as caregivers can choose it. You know what yours is. I don't have to put my head on your shoulders. Sometimes it's Moses, sometimes it's Jesus, sometimes it's Allah. But other times it's how you embrace yourself, getting a good therapist, going to a support group, and finding self-love. For an alcoholic or an addict, like say a 12-step program is transformative. That's how they find self-love. When you leave today, you've heard so many great speakers and so many good things. I want you to take the things you felt most comfortable with and call it your transformation. Because transformation is what we need as caregivers, to get out of the stuck place, to get out of the quicksand, right? Not to let this take us, but for us to take it. Because transform people. It's true. But also, as a psychologist, I'll tell you that hurt people hurt people. So it's important for us to be aware and to transform and find self-love. Because in that, we're going to be the corrective experience for our loved one, the person we've taken care of. In fact, if you will, when I wrote Take Your Oxygen First with the team, we said to people, listen, you got to take your oxygen first. It's medicinal. If I had a chronic or terminal or acute illness, okay, I do have a chronic illness. So when I talk to people, I want this. If the caregiver is not on 2 feet, able to bear witness, is stressed and anxious, how comfortable does a person with a chronic or terminal illness feel when their whole life is shifting? So the best medicine a caregiver can do this. And I think the beauty of the summit today is you have to start today. You really do. Just even picking a small little piece, okay? Progress is 3 steps forward and 2 backwards. Don't kill yourself. Don't worry about it. Be kind to yourself. But start today. You know, I put Bob Saget up here because obviously today, you know, we always say if you don't start today, start tomorrow. But today is the first day of the rest of your life. And if that doesn't work out for you, tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. But the irony in this, of course, is he passed away in Orlando at the Ritz-Carlton, not knowing at all with any illness that the next day would not be there. So being kind to yourself, listen to the meditations, listen to the breath work, listen to the lessons today, bringing it all home for you as a caregiver can be started. Go home and do it, and don't push yourself. Now, I don't want to be Pollyanna. I want to be authentic with you as a therapist. Listen, everybody, I think, can find empathy and accountability in our lives. And that's the key for us as caregivers. And it's also key for us as human beings in a non-toxic atmosphere, meaning being empathic, being accountable means we understand what the person may be going through, okay? But we have to be accountable for our role here. What is going on, A, with ourselves or with the other person? So as I work with addicts and alcoholics, okay, and I ran treatment centers, it was so important that, yes, the identified patient who was the alcoholic or addict that was in our treatment center was there, but it was just as important for the family member to come and take ownership and accountability and say, well, I may have enabled this. You know, I may have done that because I had my own issues. And the beauty was they were able to meet in the middle, just like a good partnership, a good marriage, a good whatever. Two people have to meet in the middle with empathy and accountability. The definition of burnout is literally when one person works harder than the other. So that works for most everybody in our society, and I think most caregivers. However, as a psychologist, again, I don't want to be that Pollyanna and create toxic positivity. The American Psychological Association says it doesn't work really as well with about 7 to 8% of the population. And I just want you to know that. I do a presentation with the WellMed Charitable Foundation. I'm sure you can get it online. It's called High Conflict Caregiving. And when you have somebody, anybody, whether it's in your family situation, a work situation, that has what we call an attachment issue, often an attachment disorder, even a personality disorder, we call it. Listen, that person will not have that empathy and that accountability that you need. And they become more toxic, of course. And then we have to, with a good therapist, figure this out. If we can go no contact, it's helpful because toxicity pulls us back. If we have to have modified contact, then we need to talk to a good therapist how to figure that out. But I don't want you to beat your head up against the wall. If you have people that really will never get it, that is something we call, personality disorder. Now, sometimes we have to take care of a loved one in that way, but that's when we become more resourceful and we bring others in and we try to do our best with our own therapist or our own sort of healing to realize that we can't take it personal, that whatever that person's going through, we have deep compassion. Somehow they too were let down by parenting, but we still have to deal with it. So I want to say that really clearly. Most people in our society, though, we can meet in the middle, okay? And we can get real. Getting real means that we literally have control of ourselves and our lives. Remember that saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference, okay? We can deal with our responses. Yes, we couldn't deal with that hurricane that came here to South Florida or Hurricane Ian several weeks ago, but we can batten down the hatches, right? We can go find some other place when we get that warning. We can do things like control our response. So I think today at the summit, we're asking you, well, how are you responding? Okay, things that you can't control. Gosh, your loved one has a very chronic or acute illness, cancer, diabetes, whatever it is, we can only bear witness to the pain, but we can also realize this is a gift that we have to look at ourselves. So getting real means, okay, understanding what self-esteem is, understanding that caregivers have guilt. And in psychology, guilt is really correlated to self-esteem. I know this is odd, but this is the clinical sort of adage that the higher your self-esteem, the lower your guilt. The higher your guilt, usually the lower your self-esteem. So it's critical for you to take care of yourself, befriending your neurosystem. Literally befriending your neurosystem is going to create high self-esteem because you're going to care about yourself. You're going to reparent yourself. High self-esteem comes from feeling like you have control over events and not that events have control over you. I love music, and I'll quote a rock and roll lyric here, which is done by Metallica 30 years ago. The song, Nothing Else Matters, was all about if you know yourself and who you are, and taking your mind, your body, and your spirit, and embrace yourself, you can pretty much handle anything. Bullies, names, judgment, people dividing you, because you know who you are. Your values are important to you. So it's important to find the passion today in becoming authentic in our lives. It really is. Caregivers really don't talk often about this, but it's a beauty to be authentic. It's kind of medicinal for your loved ones, for your long distance caregivers, for everybody to find out we're not responsible for them, but we're responsible for our own honesty. Listen, Kristen Hanna, who I had the pleasure of connecting with, said finding your passion isn't about careers and money, okay? It's not even about the caregiving. It's about finding your authentic self, the one you buried beneath other people's needs, okay? Now, we do that. We go on default, right? Our fight, flight, freeze response in our brain, which is the neurological system, we get triggered by other people sometimes, and we default, right? And we don't default on the honest self because we get scared, and then we develop what's called the fight, flight, freeze response. That's why today, to find the joy and to bring the things that you learned about today is so critical. But our responsibility with that information that we take home in that transformative path that we choose is to emotionally self-regulate. I know that's a clinical term and it's heady, but at the end of the day, it means stress reduction. It means adopting ourselves first. It means becoming our own child that we now are parenting in a new way. It's called a corrective emotional experience. Now, parenting isn't just about telling ourselves that we love ourselves. We love ourselves because love is important. Don't get me wrong, but love is sometimes misunderstood. In fact, I go to court sometimes testifying in cases and somebody's saying, I love you, but they're up for a felony. Listen, parenting is about being fair, consistent, and available. And emotional self-regulation is for us to come back and reparent ourselves in a fair, consistent, and available way. So emotional regulation, basically in the neurological way, is a system of conscious personal management that helps us control what we think and say and do. Now, the media thing, and maybe think about it for a second, we do default to what we were taught as a child. We're tattooed in our minds almost, that childhood. That child cannot resist what they're hearing. I came from a very conflict-driven family, and I came out with a whole different fight, flight, freeze, not understanding the world. And again, my therapy journey has been trying to peel these layers, and I'm still just a work in progress, but peeling those layers is the point to get to authenticity. People ask me, do you ever get authentic? And probably not till the day we die. We'll keep peeling the onion, because I use onion because we cry at every level. But the important part we have to understand is our self-regulation as caregivers, our stress reduction as caregivers is critical. It's the engine which drives us. It's emotional self-regulation. So if you're feeling like you're walking on eggshells, or you came to this conference, in anxiety and depression and looking for answers, sometimes the answers are just within you. How do we do this? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't go with the therapist. Make sure the therapist is, though, trauma informed and understands that the neurosystem is what we need to really take care of. Not necessarily go back and find out what happened totally when we were a kid. It's how do we honor ourselves? Because we need an engine, and that is our neurosystem. When we were born, we had 9 months, hopefully. My baby had 8, but 9 months of safety. And then we came out and the lights hit us and somebody else hits us to see if we're alive. And then from then on, it's an assault that we can't push away. We never really befriended our neurosystem. All the things around us affect us. So I'm saying the first step today when you leave this summit is understand the most important system in your life is your neuro. It goes from your brain to your healing organs throughout your body, sends messages back. And it's about you taking care of yourself. And it's strictly this. I'm sure you've heard it often today, but there's a neurological, anatomical, physiological reason we're asking you to do that. A, to build self-esteem. B, here's the pattern that needs to be followed. You just did the breathing exercises, which I'll do at the end as well to give you another technique. The regular exercise is a stress reducer. When you're feeling you're walking on eggshells, when you leave here today with your loved one or somebody, you take a break. You go find a quiet environment, a comfortable position. You say, listen, I'm going to chill. I'll be back. Meditation, yoga, biofeedback. These are all powerful ways to change the brain, the neural pathways of our brain. It's called neuroplasticity. And finally, the beauty of really the WellMed Charitable Foundation, Caregiver SOS, is that they have fabulous ways to deal with group and social support, whether it's the caregiver teleconnection or just visiting the Caregiver SOS. But they're committed to your support. So these are the things we're responsible for. Yeah, no one else is. They're not going to be some guy or girl coming in with a cape. I used to think my parents would always be the ones that saved me until I found out how many challenges and flaws they had too, and they couldn't. It's us. We have to emotionally regulate by stress reduction. Then we have to be so mindful as caregivers as not to let ourselves get into toxic settings, bullying, controlling, people that know more than us, and then we back down. The more healthy relationships a child or a caregiver has, the more likely he or she will be able to recover from complex trauma and thrive, okay? The relationships are critical. The relationships, in fact, are the agent of change. They're the most powerful therapy is human love. Look back. The Polyvagal Institute was literally started by an anthropologist named Dr. Stephen Porges. Look back to the beginning of time. Humans evolved because we knew how to get communities, the hunter and gatherers. It wasn't the survival of the fittest. We could socially regulate. The child just wanted to socially regulate, right, with their parent for a healthy attachment. Those needs are still here. And if we haven't looked at them neurologically, we're doomed to recreate the dramas and traumas. So we at WellMed have an ESRT, Emotional Support Response Team. And the bottom line is we don't want toxic communities, and you as caregivers don't want toxic settings. You got to mind yourself. When you know it's there, you have to check out, find a strategy, and get out. You know, children learn how to regulate their emotions through co-regulation. We do too. We're simply have the child mind off. The better we can soothe them when they're agitated or support them. When they are low, the better they absorb how to do this for themselves. We heal our lives neurologically, basically through relationships. We got into this problem because of relationships often. I did, because I wasn't really taught healthy relationships when I was a child. But we have to get out of this by getting healthy relationships, by parenting ourselves in a healthy way. So this is basically the deal. Besides for Gabor Mate, which I'd like you to explore, go and pursue Dr. Brene Brown. She's ideal for you as caregivers. Take all that you're learning today that the WellMed Charitable Foundation is providing, but also bring in Brene, bring in Gabor, and explore them. Her work with boundaries and her work as a vulnerable human in recovery, just like Gabor, is saying that we as caregivers have to have boundaries. It helps the person in front of us feel safe. It helps us to be able to love ourselves and have fair, consistent, and available feelings for ourselves. When we do this, we don't pour over into the other person. Listen, when we say no, I know that's a guilt feeling from us often, but it also allows us to have clear-cut values with the person in front of us, clear-cut expectations, okay? So this is important. If you don't feel comfortable with the boundaries today, this is a clinical challenge, and we get emotional self-regulation, social, and then we get a good trauma therapist, and we talk about it. Because when we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we do feel used. We do feel mistreated. Sometimes that's on our own. Coaching, I say, is always keeping a promise to ourselves. We can also feel used and mistreated by ourselves, and it starts with us. So reparenting ourselves, becoming our own authentic coach. That's important. Again, keeping those promises. We can shift the brain from a negative place to a more positive place. We can go to accepting from fear. We can go to encouraging from meltdowns. I'm going to give you a phenomenally cool way, another breathwork technique at the end that will allow you to do this. But any trauma reduction technique can shift the chemistry of your body. But we have to keep doing it over and over and over again, like a coach, right? It's like a rock that's craggy with the water going across it. It takes us a long time. That's why I ask you to forgive yourself. Don't worry, you don't have to become this overnight. This is just having the intention of starting to shift the way you look at yourself, starting to become emotionally a self-regulator, starting to take those negative feelings and start shifting them neurologically, okay? It's important. This is how I came into this world. I think many of you too. At WellMed, I work with our doctors, our staff. Listen, this is also an F. What did I say, an F? Because we default to the fight, flight, freeze response, right? That's the biological default. But the fourth F that came out of our childhoods was fawning, which is codependency. Now, caregivers also have a mess sometimes. I did, and I still do probably if I don't do the things necessary for myself. I was the hero child. My family was such in disarray. I had to be the one to save everybody, get everybody to smile, laugh, feel like they're proud. I'm not sure what your role was. My wife was a lost child, right? Her brother was a scapegoat. We come out with these roles. Sometimes if we don't deal with those roles, we can recreate them in caregiving. Listen, Codependency Anonymous is a wonderful place to go, coda.org. It's going to help you there. But what's going to help us most is to understand we're not Superman, Superwoman, okay? Kryptonite is out there. We have to understand that we are vulnerable. At WellMed, I talk about vulnerability and knowing we have the confidence to get around and over the situation by going through it is resilience. And so vulnerability and the ability to get through it is leadership. And my baby, you know, I don't put her in timeouts and whatnot. I actually cry in front of her, but she knows Daddy is going to get through it to the other side. What we say in the therapy world, and actually Buddhist thought, if you will, is that pain is inevitable, suffering is not. So we want you today to start getting this information that you got and starting utilizing it for emotional regulating, to understand that we don't have to hide behind the superhero role, that we're strong because we're weak. We're a two-edged sword, okay? We're fearless because we've been afraid. You know, as we lean into transformation, it's simply to lean into emotionally regulate ourselves, be mindful of the relationships we have, that they're more 50-50, okay? When you leave here at the summit, I hope you met people today somehow, whether it's through the internet, through Zoom, through Ron's wonderful media facilitation, or just face-to-face, wherever you're at. All across the country, you have people. Because really, friendships matter, but healthy friendships matter most, okay? I want you to nurture people to connect with, your healthy relationships. I don't know who they are. Sometimes caregiving is a very isolating process, and we give up friendships. But when you leave here with these tools, find that friend or group of friends, support them, stand by, look for the people who always supported you, that you felt comfortable with, encourages you to grow, pushes you outside your comfort zone, and yet is there. Don't hang around those people who are blindly supportive and telling you things and where to go and controlling you and criticizing and judging you. Don't do that. So family's not always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs. Look for the family of choice, whether that comes from your neighborhood, that comes from your faith-based programs, wherever you're at. Certainly it comes at WellMed Charitable Foundation through Caregiver SOS. I'm going to leave you with 5 different ways to take the path of joy, taking all that you learned today and bringing it in. I'm going to save you some time because, A, as a dad, I'm 67 years old. I need to, right? Yeah, I'm at the age where I get tired of hiding behind whatever people think is correct. So I'm going to do that. Be your own transformational coach. Here's 5 ways to do it. And again, it's your choice to take which road you want. 2 roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. A beautiful saying. Here's the first one. Caregiver's path. Be here now. What you learned before with the mindfulness-based stress reduction exercise, what you learned from the prior speakers is you got to quiet your mind. And that's done through emotional self-regulation. Integrating this in your daily routine. Learn to be with yourself, to be quiet, but to hear. Okay, to appreciate things like gratitude, things like journaling. This is self-regulation technique. Another way is to trust your voice. The words trust is to reach ultimate success together. That's the acronym. Okay, discern the difference between your critical voice and the one that judges you. Do not be your own worst enemy. Words matter, right? Don't keep talking to yourself in negative ways. Your authentic voice is a loving voice. It's kind and supportive. We need that to speak to you. If you want a good reference to start this one on trusting your voice, grab the 4 Agreements by Dr. Miguel Ruiz. Powerful. We use it at WellMed in our programming for high-performing teams. But come back to yourself. Return to the voice of your body. Trust that much. Really, it's more simple. You don't have to go out and do a lot of things, but you have to turn inward here. The third thing for you today, when you leave the summit, okay, is incorporate your passion in your job and in your life. I don't know what that is. I can't put my head on your shoulders. When I do group work or I have people, I ask them to go do that why exercise and find out what is your emotional self-regulator. What did you do to calm yourself down in your lifetime that you felt comfortable in sync with? I'd like you to think about that as you leave today. As you end, incorporate your passion, find it. It's okay if you don't know it now. If you can't figure out your purpose, figure out your passion. For your passion will lead you directly to your purpose. That means you find what you want to do. I've learned so much through my child, right? Passion's going to be tricky to characterize, right? But what she's done to me, she taught me that playing is literally the optimum place where I think all of us as caregivers and people need to get to. It's where our autonomic system feels really safest, is playing, it's laughing. And she was a gift to kind of get me back there. I think kids always are until the parents screw them up, right? But play, play, play. That means find your passion. Your nervous system will feel calmer. And you yourself, like I said, start beginning that stress reduction process when you find it. It's what powers you up. Now, as you take today and what you've learned today on that path of joy, keep track of your truths. That means more being a transformational coach. Speak it to everywhere and anywhere. There's no need for stretching or bending the truth to appear more. There's no need to justify or modify reality. because our true and authentic selves understand that flaws make up the perfection who we are. We screw up. I'm the first to really tell my daughter that your father's the chief mistake maker in the household. But I can get through it. She can get through it. We'll be okay. Never worry about who will be offended if you speak the truth. Worry about who will be misled, deceived, and destroyed if you don't. Our loved ones need truth. We can help them get support. We have to, though, speak our truth too to our family members and cognitively. Obviously, I'm not, listen, again, not the toxic positivity. I work with cognitive challenges, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lewy body. This is one that you'll live in the gray area with neurological issues. But at the end of the day, you know what's right. You know it's balanced. You know it's not black and white. And finally, your step 5, continue to ask questions. Be curious. This is the beauty, right? Always ask questions. It's like Columbo, if you remember the thing. He probably knew the answers, but he always asked questions. He had the humility to ask questions. All right? Explore, formulate your opinions of each situation through total understanding, through questions, right? This will bring you back to your gut. When we ask questions instead of giving direct orders, this is years back that Dale Carnegie said that. We invite people. We bring things in. We have the humility to know what we don't know. And I don't know a whole lot either. I need a lot. I look around me. The answers are there. But discovering the truth about yourself and ourselves, it's a lifetime of work, caregivers. But it's worth the effort. We cannot really lean out of it, go right or go left, put it under the carpet. We walk on lumpy carpets. We have to kind of lean in to emotional self-regulation and being around healthy people and understanding, giving ourselves permission that this 5-step process is slow. Today, you had awareness and you continue to have awareness, okay? WellMed Charitable Foundation continually will provide you services and teleconnection episodes, but be kind to yourself. You know that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And today, at the summit, it's a single step. But also know you can't read this in a book. I have the most smartest patients in the world, but sometimes they still drink alcohol, relapse, okay, after they leave my office. You must do this in the heart. Emotional self-regulation is usually experiential, breath work, yoga, walking, kindly telling somebody what you need to tell them. These are real emotional regulating things, but they're experiential. So the longest journey as a caregiver or as a human being we ever make is the journey from the head to the heart. I'm asking you today to take a lot that you've got, bring it to your own heart, experientially walk through this. And I'm going to allow you to walk through this exercise I do with cops, firemen, emergency medical technicians. Okay, because caregivers literally have clinical issues similar. Again, you run into burning homes. That's why I call you a family first responder. And just like them, when I used to go to police stations, I would watch the sergeant learn how to do breath work with 100 cops in the morning. It was fascinating. You don't need a license, you don't need certification. And I'm going to send you to places on YouTube to keep this going. But things like breath work will use itself. We're the only people, only humans, only species that can do breath work that can change the chemistry of our body. Today, and the journey ahead for authenticity, right, is simply to be self-aware. When we're self-aware, we reduce anxiety, we reduce stress. So I hope today's summit, you found things that will emotionally regulate you, right? I'm going to give you breath work, but there's 1,000 things you probably are learning more about yourself. And I remember finding your own passion and the things that really jazzes you up is a part of this emotional regulation. But I think if you start doing this, you can go from a negative experience, because I believe in the neuroplasticity of the mind. I believe you can change the brain. It just takes a while. And again, it's 3 forward, 2 back. But if you're feeling sometimes that hopeless, depressed, lonely feeling, shift it. Shift it with an emotional regulator like breath work, gratitude journaling, walking, calling a friend, connecting with them. Okay, fabulous results. You go from disengagement to engagement. But again, you got to be your own transformational coach. And the beauty of this, again, the beauty of this, we have to do it over time. It's loving ourselves by emotionally regulating, and it's being aware of the relationships we have. That's how we find joy. That's the setting we find joy. It's by coming in and being in the present. You've heard so much today about mindfulness. I don't think you have to sit on a mountain in Tibet for an hour a day to do this. When I work with cops and firemen and caregivers, we maybe only have 80 seconds to calm ourselves down in the moment, right? We're pressed. So understand we're about to do breath work. I'm going to send you home. We're back to the summit, if you will, to Carol, to Tina, to Ron, who's, really gets it. I love working with all of them. About our breath. Our breath really does affect our mind and body. It really does. It grounds you as a caregiver on 2 feet. It's something we can do that transforms your body's chemistry. You really can, in the moment. The cops do it, firemen, before they come into a SWAT situation. I know you don't know this, and be the reactor. They need to take 80 seconds and be the proactor. They have to be proactive. Isn't caregiving the same thing? I think so. But breath work will return control back to you, because we get most controlling when our minds are out of control. So I'm going to show you a grounding technique, or I'm going to actually do it with you because I need it today too. I've got to go pick up my daughter after this conversation with you and go pick her up. But grounding technique like nothing else. This one is a tried and proven method. My friend who I worked with, Dr. Andy Weil, brought it to America and did post-test and pre-test design with it, found out it works with healthcare workers. But why it works is, again, our neurosystem, that you have what's called the vagus nerve. It goes from the cortex of your brain through your healing organs into your body, your gut. You can calm it down at any given moment. When we're stressed, it's dysregulated. There's a lot of ways to calm the vagus nerve, but that is kind of the entry point to the neurological system. At the Polyvagal Institute, this is the mantra: unlock the power of your vagus nerve for self-healing. So if you will, I'm going to actually do this exercise with you because I need it as much as you do today. As a professional caregiver, I'm totally in the same clinical mindset as you. But I'm going to teach you with me 4-7-8, which is an experiential grounding technique that takes less than 80 seconds. But I also honor you in terms of your independence. As a hypnotherapist, I believe your breath is your choice. So if you don't want to do this exercise, feel free to default. And when I ask you to close your eyes, you can pray. That's a neuro sort of technique that you can change the brain cells and neuroplasticity. You can have gratitude as you close your eyes. You can go to a safe place you once were, touch it, feel it, and smell it, okay? It's only 80 seconds, right? Or you can just simply be silent. Those 80 seconds are stilling, okay? It really does change your body. In fact, the method 4-7-8 was actually created for sleep. Dr. Andy Weil brought it as a first sleep entry, but it does allow us well-being and it does change our brain. So here's another place for you to go on YouTube. You don't need my voice. This is the last time. I just did this with the Easter seals. So I figured I would include this slide here because 4-7-8, this is my colleague who I worked with 25 years ago. You can go to drwild.com. He's fabulous. But the breath work is really a way to shift yourself if you're feeling dysregulated in the moment. Yeah, you might even feel it right now. You've been listening to my voice. So here's how you do it, okay? When I ask you to breathe in, you'll breathe in through your nostrils. It's refreshing. It's cool. You feel lively. You feel alive. Okay, you keep it, swish it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. You can picture peace or serenity or unicorns, or just be silent for 7 seconds. But when you exhale, exhale with determination, exhale with gusto, like this. It's the exhalation that's the secret sauce that triggers the vagus nerve response. So if you'll join me and join the entire summit, and if you will, all of us be connected by our breath. Close your eyes. You can choose to do the alternative if you'd like, but let's take 80 seconds just to do 4-7-8 simply 4 times together, okay? With your eyes closed, breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Blow out with passion, 8. Breathe in the calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Breathe in the calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out with gusto again for 8. Last time. Breathe in your calmness for 4. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7. Now, all the anxiety you're feeling for 8. With your eyes still closed, please go inside. Go inside your body right now and scan it. Feel the shift. Feel that you were actually able to do that for yourself. You shifted the chemistry of your body. You literally produced a hormone called oxytocin, which connects to your neurotransmitters. You really did. This is what first responders do. There's no group more powerful than you as family first responders today, okay? You were able to do that in less than 80 seconds. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back. Come back and realize you don't need a license or certification. I would love for you to hear another voice do this. Go on YouTube, put in Dr. Weil 478, but you can take this practice, okay? If you use it in the moment, it's gonna calm you. If you do it 4 to 6 times a day over 6 weeks, he said it brings you greater proactivity. So understand that breath work or any sort of gratitude or any sort of self-compassion technique or trauma reduction technique is a moment of self-compassion. And a moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. And a string of moments, literally as a caregiver, of these times can change the course of your caregiving experience and of your life. If you're interested as clinicians or as family caregivers more in this compassion work, Dr. Germer is in Austin, Texas with Dr. Kristen Neff. They have the Mindful Self-Compassion Institute, and you can pursue it. But for you at the summit, okay, this is a powerful day. You showed up. When we say preaching to the choir, you are the choir. You cared enough about your own awareness. Take your oxygen first. Be the change you want to see in others. Live your truth. Find your joy. Just know that better things are coming. They truly are. They are. Keep calm and just breathe. Find the joy in this journey. Take what you've learned today, bring it home, emotionally self-regulate, hang around healthy people to practice it, and take this journey less traveled. I think you'll be happy with it. Ron, it's all yours.
Well, we've got some questions we want to throw your way, but first, Dr. Jamie, a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I appreciate it. And since I'm the moderator, I can take the privilege of asking the first couple of questions. And if you have a question, put it into the Q&A, and Morgan Zachmeyer will jump in as she puts those questions together. Let me start off and go back to something that you said, Dr. Jamie, which is go back to your childhood. What made you happy? What did you respond to? What motivated you? Can you do that on your own, or do we need a therapist to help us do that?
That's a great question, Ron, because some of us didn't really have the happiest childhood. I don't remember a lot of things from my own childhood. As I've done a second book now, and the co-author keeps asking me about my childhood. And we have what's called in childhood something called CPTSD, which is basically complex PTSD. It's those narcissistic injuries, those things our parents probably didn't mean to do, but they did because they didn't know any better. And so it's tough for us sometimes to find what that joyous time is back there. I always suggest it's great to explore with a trauma-informed therapist who understands that it's not about Freudian or Jungian flashbacks or what necessarily happened back there. Somebody who can reflect back to you like a trauma-informed coach, a safe place to really find what blew your hair back in childhood. Maybe it wasn't in childhood you found it. Maybe it's as you emerged from childhood, it was there. But returning back to what did when all the what can I say? All the development of our lives and dysfunctional environments occurred. Finding whatever really you enjoyed is a powerful sort of way to start this emotional regulation process. Why? Because you know it's going to make you feel better. I'm asking you to do breath work. Maybe that's new to you. Meditation, maybe that's new to you. Put your foot in the water. But finding out what you really enjoyed as a child, and even then as you emerge from childhood, or even after that, is critical. But to your point, it's a twofold process. We can be our own trauma therapist and nurture that play, that which made us really happy, if you can find it. But it's always better also to have that healthy, safe regulator with us to reflect it back. Somebody who doesn't judge, somebody who can bear witness to it. And that's usually a transformational coach. Obviously, it can be a friend too, but friends and therapists, they usually it's good to have boundaries with them.
There's been an emphasis of late, both for regular medical care and for psychological care, to use telemedicine. What's your feeling about face-to-face versus telemedicine?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Telemedicine is like kissing your sister. I mean, it's a kiss, right? But it's not what the autonomic nervous system becomes most regulated with. In fact, when COVID hit, we had to work with our doctors, right? How you create relationships that are safe, healthy, and keep the patient, if you will, their emotional system feeling safe. It's more difficult like this. Of course, like as a therapist, I'd rather see the smile, the wrinkles in your face, if you will, your body language. All of this kind of makes up all who we are. It's not just this right now as I'm speaking to you. You can only see me basically from my shoulders down, right? So the most wonderful thing is to get out, self-regulate in a safe environment. Really, whether that you find again is your community, your faith-based program, to go out and enjoy some activities and stuff. This is you're going to be your emotional regulator. I know we have COVID concerns, and so I'm asking if you want to mask up and do things that are safe, great. Want to monitor you so you feel safe, great. But Ron, to your question, it's face-to-face. It's really the emotional self-regulator that accelerates our healing and allows us to learn about authenticity and healthy attachments.
And how do you find that therapist?
That's a great question, Ron. So since we have a whole divergent crew here on the phone,
From all over the country and the world.
all over the country, I'm going to make a self-serving sort of recommendation here because I write for this magazine. In and out. And I'm not sending you to look for my articles. I'm looking because they have the best search engine I've ever seen, really around the world, if you will. Somehow or another, they got this one right. It's psychologytoday.com. Okay, psychologytoday.com. On the front page, it says search for a therapist. Put your zip code in. That's all you need to do. Put your zip code in. Out will pop out within a 5-mile area. All the therapists in that area close to you. You can pick a female, you can pick a male, you can filter. Here's how you filter trauma, trauma informed, somebody who understands, or you can go a geriatric care manager or a social worker, somebody who understands caregiving. You can truly get comfortable with their vita, their picture, their resume, and then call them up and see if your system, your neurological system feels safe with them, if you can actually talk with them. So we've actually, not many people realize that Psychology Today is better than most employee assistance programs and probably better than any search engine. It allows you first in a safe way to look at them and to make a list and see who you might feel comfortable with. And then I just encourage you. Again, the trauma-informed therapist is, I think, the future of you as a family caregiver. It is of me as a professional caregiver. But I also want you to meet them. Don't be fooled by letters after the name. Mine doesn't mean much either. I don't think I knew much about what I was talking about, even though I taught trauma work in college, until I had to go through my own trauma. So maybe make sure they're in therapy themselves and pick one out. It's an easy deal. You can do it when you get home after this summer.
And then you say,
and Ron, I'm sorry.
Hang on one second, Morgan. When you say trauma, Dr. Jamie, I think of somebody in a car wreck or somebody in an emotionally difficult relationship. Is it all kinds of trauma?
It's big T and small t. So you're right. Thank you for that clarification, Ron. It's so important. So in working with first responders, obviously there's a lot of trauma. I work with the military, I work with cops, firemen. Your whole life shifts by some episodic thing that happens, right? God forbid you walk onto an IED. God forbid you run into a car accident. Terrible things that could possibly happen to you of trauma that we can only imagine and hate to even feel that would be in anybody's life. Then there's a small t of trauma that all of us inevitably has, and that is more narcissistic injuries, things that happen in our childhood. I came from, again, I don't think my parents intended it, but a very high conflict sort of family that I ended up, going through a lot of kid trauma. We call childhood trauma, CPTSD. And I'll recommend if anybody gravitates to this, I work with a charity called, and it's fabulous, CPTSD Foundation.org. Okay, you'll understand much more about what childhood PTSD is. It's not that big T, which can also trigger in amazing, terrible ways, sometimes small t, cues and triggers. But we all have and come from this place that we don't understand. Listen, childhood is something we can't resist parenting, right? Literally, it's kind of like a prisoner of war in some way. That's why we need desperately to have fair, consistent, available parents. And that's why we need to be able to cry and not have these timeouts and be put in corners where we misunderstand the emotions. So all of us, though, I'm a Dr. Spock kid. Dr. Spock couldn't have been more off base with his recommendations for my parents, all right? Let them cry. Don't feed them until this time. So the small trauma, which is what I'm mostly talking about, that you can look up in CPTSD Foundation or the Polyvagal Institute, is something we all go, and it happens at childhood before 10. Big trauma is obviously the obvious ones that will always trigger the CPTSD.
Perfect. Hey, Morgan, turn your video on and you can wave at us when you've got a question you want to present to us. So let me turn it over to you. And Morgan, I know, has some questions for you, Dr. Jamie.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, Ron, for your moderation and for turning it over to me real quick. I also dropped these in a direct message to you, Dr. Huysman, because they are quite loaded questions. And of course, we thank you again for answering them. I have 3 that I wrote to you, and one actually just popped up. So I'll go in order, and of course, I can repeat as needed. So
Sure.
first, how do we find our passion? Second, can you define toxic positivity? Third, how do we get from stress, exhaustion, and anger to a playful mindset? And finally, what about PTSD from bullying in the workplace? Thank you again.
Yeah, you want to cue me up now? Because my child is my memory. She has all my passwords. So give me number 1 and I'll address it.
Let's do them one at
sounds
a time.
good. Okay, so first is how do we find our passion?
Okay, tough, but it requires dedication and love. And our first steps, if you will, in this journey. We need silence. And so often that's found in a good therapeutic environment. We need to separate ourselves from the high conflict situation we're in and go examine what our accountability and role is in that high conflict, or if we have to have modified contact in a high conflict, what that would be. So my suggestion is, if you came up and do the exercise I did with the why, cannot find what your passion is, go and really have a good trauma therapist and yourself just banter about and start peeling the onion one at a time. That would be the first step. Also, being in safe environments like support groups and being quiet and listening as opposed to talking and let it come to you. So there's a couple of ways, but you do have to really go and be dedicated to going and finding that. Some people know it off the bat, and you're right, Morgan, some don't. So what was number 2?
Thank you so much. So with that, number 2 is, how can you define toxic positivity in your own words?
Great. That's not a difficult thing, because I'm always trying to call it out. And many organizations and people and family members do that. So when you hear things like people just don't want to listen and bear witness to your pain, tell you pull yourself up by the bootstrap, or, immediately not listen, this too will pass, and then they walk away. Often toxic positivity is a pat answer for somebody that maybe doesn't want to bear witness and feel uncomfortable sometimes in the pain. And we take it on and we just get guilty and shameful, and we say, oh yeah, I should have done that. No, this is a long organic process. It's 3 steps forward and 2 backwards. We need people who will bear witness to our pain. We need to understand this is a slow process, and there's not going to be a bumper sticker or Tony Robbins seminar that's going to be the life changer. So to that, I think we can recognize it in our gut. I want you all to allow your bodies, your gut, to be more your decider. Okay, as I tell my daughter, and I said, the world will gaslight you. Gaslighting is 5% truth and 95% BS. Okay, you can hear it, but believe what you see and believe what you feel and make decisions like that. So you'll know what toxic positivity is, and you'll say, hey, that's not it. I need to go and find somebody who will help me slowly, organically go through this process. What's number 3?
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and go to number 4, because that talks a lot about what you just mentioned about the toxic positivity. And I'll go back to number 3, but number 4 that just came in as I was asking you the first 3, somebody asked, what about PTSD from bullying in the workplace?
Okay, PTSD and bullying in the workplace does happen, and we call them toxic work sites. They have that same quality that a toxic relationship would have, where it has somebody with little or no empathy, little or no accountability, where people don't work 50-50 with each other. At WellMed, we developed the emotional support response team to create what we call psychologically safe environments, because we just are human beings, right? Not human doings. And I think more the worksite can look at us as human beings instead of human doings. A toxic worksite is a black and white thinking worksite, meaning it doesn't have the ability to think in the gray. And often it doesn't have the ability to listen to new answers, new people, and really honor that process. So, well, it can happen in the work site, and we look for change in the work site, and we look to work at WellMed, certainly with the ESRT team, to change it. Now, again, I don't want to be toxically positive. If you have that particular work site and the person cannot or will not change, and I mentioned to you there's 7 or 8%, the American Psychological Association says it has it, be real mindful for yourself of what you want to do in that particular place. Don't keep beating your head up against the wall if there's no support or no cavalry coming. You may have to go find a healthier environment to work in. But if they're working on it and people are working on it together, that can be a joyous experience.
And thank you
What's
again. And so finally, our fourth one, thank you, is how do we get from stress, exhaustion, and anger to a playful mindset?
Well, you know, this is a tough one, Morgan, because I've run treatment centers and I'm an addiction counselor, right? Sad part is that, and we wish we didn't have to do this, sometimes we have to hit our knees to the ground and realize that the alternative is not working. It's tough to really shift and change people. I often say, and I didn't say this first, this is an old adage, it's easier to raise a healthy child than to fix a broken adult, right? And so understanding that is that sometimes when we're feeling that terrible anxiety and stress and our knees are on the ground, you know, that's a time when you want a friend or a loved one, or WellMed Charitable Foundation does it fabulously, do an outreach and say, come here, it's safe. You can talk about this, or you have a family member that does it. So again, I'm going to ask you, if you're feeling like that, to go see a good trauma-informed therapist. I'm going to say, go on to the caregiver teleconnection, start connecting if you have to telephonically. But again, I'm going to say, you're going to find more joy in support groups and co-regulating with other people. So it is possible. It's a journey. It's an organic one. And I know it's tough, but I'm going to say something. It's physiological, y'all. It's not Barnes & Noble's new age section of Kumbaya any longer. It is something that we can actually change our brains slowly but surely. But first, we have to be committed to a healthy environment with a healthy relationship and healthy people. And then we have to also slowly but surely, with love and forgiveness for ourselves, start on this road less traveled to start dealing with our stress very, very slowly and integrating it more into our lives. You all learned today about a fabulous, you know, place to come for interventions and things that might have resonated with you today. And Morgan, you're right. I mean, sometimes we just feel that low. And that's why I had that little child on my back on those days I feel low. It's a lily pad. But, you know, honor yourself. Know that this change can happen. In psychology, we see this as the future, is neuroplasticity. Go look up Gabor, go look up Brene Brown, and start that process slowly. And again, experientially start, if you can, putting your foot into the water.
Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate it. And
Thank
Dr.
you.
Jamie,
Thank you.
we so much appreciate your time. We're going to jump to Albert Robledo in just a minute. But for those, Dr. Jamie, who want to learn more about you, how do they find out about you?
Well, we're in construction. You can always get me through drjamie.com, but I got to tell you that one's definitely under construction today. I will suggest to you, certainly, you can get us through there. How's that? TYOF@wellmed.net. I'm more than happy to respond and to connect and basically kind of get you to the right place. But, you know, I really believe in what the WellMed Charitable Foundation is doing. And I believe that we have so many cool windows, groups, caregiver SO places, caregiver teleconnection line. You can always get me, believe me. But I'm no Buddha, right? I'm like you, Ron. I'm a facilitator of a good day and of some answers. So feel free to get me there, but also feel free to utilize all that you've learned today through the WellMed Charitable Foundation.
Well, I'm sure glad you survived the latest hurricane in Florida. Have a great day, Dr. Jamie. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And be kind to yourselves. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. We really appreciate Dr. Jamie. You all are going to receive a survey after the program ends, and we encourage you to fill that out, whether it's live on paper where you are at our watch sites, or when you get that email with that information. Up next, we're delighted to welcome Albert Robledo with PTT Financial. Albert?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me out there? I hope
Hey, hear you fine. Yes.
Great. Good. My name is Albert Robledo. I am the owner of Medicare Educators. I own an insurance agency down in the Rio Grande Valley. I want to thank the Area Agency on Aging and the WellMed Charitable Foundation. What an incredible day of information. I learned so much. Dr. Chisolm's extreme gratitude, Dr. Huysman's gut. We don't listen to our gut enough. So saying that, I want to just remind all the viewers out there and all the people that are attending at a WellMed or a different location, remember, right now we're in a period, the annual enrollment period for insurance. You can make those changes. It is important that you listen to your gut. Those phone calls, most of the time that you're receiving all those phone calls or emails or different things, text messages, they don't feel right. I'm going to encourage all of you to shop local. Find an insurance agent that can help you locally and ask them to guide you through this process. It is a confusing process. How do I get my drugs costs lowered? How do I get to see the doctors that I want? How do I get more extra benefits? So please listen to your gut. Those phone calls and those emails and those texts you're getting, don't trust them. I tell my own mother, she has Medicare. I tell her, don't answer, just wait. So, but again, what an incredible day of information. I'm so grateful to be a part of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. Thank you so much, Ron. This has been an incredible morning. And my survey, I'm telling you all live now, what an incredible day.
Albert, thank you. We appreciate
Yes, sir.
it. Albert Robledo with PTT Financial. And let me thank all of our sponsors, United Healthcare, Vitas Healthcare, GB Moreno Agency, as we just heard, PTT Financial, Volver e Casa, World Voices Media, New Life Hospice, Latinx Voces, River City Credit Union, Healthcare Unlimited, Golden Outlook, Bridges at Mission, Trinity Hospice, and Sage Care Management. Thank you to Tina Smith and her incredible team, to Carol Zernio, the boss of bosses at the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And remember, coming up on November 17th, the Spanish Summit from 10 to 1 o'clock. And if you'd like to participate, you can get the information at caregiversos.org. On behalf of all of us at the Caregiver SOS and the WellMed Charitable Foundation, thank you for being here. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.